Now, DA leader John Steenhuisen has pulled out of the party's leadership race. Steenhuisen announced his withdrawal earlier today in Durban, citing that he has accomplished his DA Moonshot mission and will now be focusing on his work in government. Steenhuisen made headlines recently after allegations emerged that he abused the party's credit card for personal use. However, he was cleared following an internal investigation. Steenhuisen says he will hand over the reins in April.
I will not seek re-election for a third term as the DA federal leader at the party's upcoming federal Congress. And I do so with a full heart, knowing that I've accomplished my DA Moonshot mission and that my work in government now requires me to similarly pour my heart and soul and all of my energies into defeating foot-and-mouth disease.
Steenhuisen says the scale of the challenges facing the country's farmers demands undivided attention and that the Democratic Alliance is now stable enough to enter its next phase under new leadership.
For the rest of this term of office, I will focus all of my time and energy as Minister of Agriculture on defeating the most devastating foot-and-mouth disease outbreak our country has ever seen, and to pursue the mass vaccination to ensure that this is the last mass outbreak of FMD that our country ever sees. After leading the DA into the GNU, my next chapter must be to eradicate this devastating disease from our shores once and for all. And that, I'm afraid to say, is not a part-time job.
Meanwhile, Steenhuisen has urged political parties within the Government of National Unity not to allow internal squabbles to divert attention from the core business of saving South Africa.
As the DA, but also other GNU partners, hold internal elections over the coming months, it's paramount that we all continue to put South Africa ahead of factional and personal agendas. It would be a tragedy too great to contemplate for internal party maneuvering to plunge the GNU and our country into chaos.
Now, for a reaction on this sudden U-turn by Steenhuisen, I'm joined by the DA KZN chairperson and Steenhuisen's campaign manager, Dean Macpherson. Mr. Macpherson, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. So we know that John Steenhuisen started his political career in KZN somewhat 30 years ago. So maybe just talk to us with regards to the impact that you believe he's had, not only on the province of KZN, but also nationally.
Thank you very much for having me. Indeed, John Steenhuisen's legacy for not only KwaZulu-Natal, but in South Africa is profound. He has started his political career here as a local councillor. He led the party in the eThekwini Executive Committee. He then went on to lead the party provincially. He then became the chief whip in the National Assembly and then became the first leader of our party to take us into national government since our party dated back to 1959. So his legacy is profound and one in which we certainly as the DA and KZN are incredibly proud of, that a resident of our province, a member of our province, has ascended to the heights that John Steenhuisen has. He has always been an incredible resource to this province. He has backed many young leaders from this province to take up positions either in government here in the province or provincially or nationally, myself included, Chris Papas, Mabatu Tembe, Mzamo Billy, and others that have been able to be guided and taught by John. So today obviously is, for us, it's a day that we celebrate. We look back on the immense work that John has achieved. He has achieved every one of his goals that he set out to achieve throughout his 2 terms as leader of this party. And he leaves the DA in a much better space than when he found it in 2019, when we were polling at record lows, when we had suffered one of our worst election results ever. And John slowly but surely rebuilt this party from the ground up, focusing on activists, focusing on local government, and making sure that we were ready to ascend into the union buildings, which we eventually did in 2024.
And of course, I mean, that legacy is not without some of those speed humps. I mean, the most recent one is that of the party's credit card, even though, as we mentioned earlier, that he was cleared by that internal investigation. And I think now, even just as a Minister of Agriculture and the crisis that is being faced with regards to the foot and mouth disease, that certainly are some of the dents to that legacy that you make mention of. Do you have any more insights with regards to the decision for him to step down and not contest a third term as a leader?
Well, I don't think that you would classify those as dents. By your own admission, the so-called party credit card scandal was fictitious and made up by a disgruntled individual who was fired from the national executive, couldn't handle that, and then decided to make up false claims, and the party exonerated John. So actually, I have often said this: show me another party or a leader like John Steenhuisen who has been held up to the level of transparency that he has. So instead of that being a dent, I actually think that that is a remarkable achievement, that he was able to subject himself to that level of transparency. John Steenhuisen, as the Minister of Agriculture, is doing something that no other Minister of Agriculture has ever been able to put on the table, and that is to eradicate foot and mouth disease, not for this year, but forever. And I think that that is a bold strategy that he has. I know that he will be making some big announcements on vaccine production in this country for the first time in a quarter of a century. And so even though he has inherited this terrible problem from a dysfunctional department and entities, he hasn't, wallowed in sorrow. Instead, he's fought, he's put plans on the table, and he's executing them now. So I think that those will actually only entrench his legacy as being one of the most consequential politicians in this country. But actually, what will be one of the defining moments of John's career was that he was able to look at the landscape and say, I need to dedicate all of my time to beating this foot and mouth disease. Agriculture is very close to his heart, and also that it's now time for someone else to take the party to even greater heights than he did. And there are very few political parties in this country that actually practice internal democracy. Well, Jacob Zuma, as by your own admission in the previous excerpt, just tells people what to do. Action SA has never had an elective Congress. There are people that have led parties for more than 30 years in this country without ever being challenged. And John has been a firm believer in internal democracy, understanding limits to one's ability to lead an organization. And I think that he will be remembered for being able to say that I think it's time for someone else to take on this mantle. And I think that he should be respected and congratulated for that foresight and that political intuition to do so.
And you don't believe any party dynamics within the DA or any external political pressures have influenced this decision?
Absolutely not. John is one of my closest confidants. We have had this discussion for some while, and John is leaving on his terms. He's leaving on a high. He's leaving with dignity. He's leaving having achieved everything, and that's why he said, "It's mission accomplished for me. There's nothing more that I can do as the leader of the DA." And it's unfortunate that, and I guess, well, maybe that's just politics, as they would say in the movies, but, you know, that some people would seek to attach some other ulterior motive to John, saying that he would like to pass on the baton. I think we should recognize what he's done, applaud what he's done, and I'm sure that when the history books are written about this important chapter in South Africa of its first coalition government, I have no doubt that John Steenhuisen will be featured prominently and favorably in the chapters on this on this part of our history in South Africa.
So when we're now then looking at the transition of leadership, I mean, we're looking at that elective Congress to take place in April of this year. Some names have been thrown around with regards to who potentially could take over as the leader of the DA. Jordan Hill-Lewis emerging as one of those candidates to succeed Steenhuisen. What qualities do you think a leader needs to have to take the Democratic Alliance forward, as you're saying that John took it in 2019 to a place where now you're able to enter national government? What's needed to push it forward?
Well, I think someone who's able to understand the dynamics that exist in South Africa, that coalition governments are here to stay, someone that is able to manage coalitions and manage expectations, someone who's able to energize the grassroots of this party, particularly our activists who go out and campaign vigorously in the lead up to elections, but also someone who's able to stand up for their principles, stand up for their beliefs, and be able to chart a course that, even though some people may resist, is able to stay the course. And that's really was a hallmark of John's leadership, that when some people didn't believe in the Moonshot Pact, he stuck with it. When some people were unsure about the GNU and where the country was headed, he stuck at it. And his intuition was impeccable on both of those scores. So, political intuition is hugely important in leadership. And I'm sure that once the nominations open on the 27th of February, we'll see whose names are put into the hat. I have no doubt that the delegates will vigorously interrogate the manifestos of whoever may put their names forward. And the DA will go to its Congress and democratically elect its leaders in a calm fashion. There will be no violence. There will be no chair throwing, as we've seen in some other conferences. And then the party will do what it does best. It will unite behind that leadership, and it'll get going with its election campaign into the local government elections.
All right, Dean Macpherson, thank you so much for your time. That's the DA KZN chairperson, as well as John Steenhuisen's campaign manager, speaking to us there on the back of Steenhuisen now putting that announcement out today that he will not run for a third term.